Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of SBI's Revenue Growth Help Desk. I'm pleased to have a veteran of SBI's TV back on the show today. So Brad Christian is joining me, and a couple reasons why I asked Brad to join me. Number one is he started a new role that I think speaks to where market tailwinds are headed, and I really value his point of view on why he did that, and I thought he could share that. Number two, we're going to spend some time talking about digital transformation and evolution, something that Brad is an expert on, and he's also going to share some really nice use cases about his new role. So with that being said, Brad, good to see you, man.
Hey, Matt, great to be here. Thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. You look much better than I do. You are dressed well in a jacket. I'm in my COVID uniform, which is a polo shirt, but hopefully I can get out and play a quick round of 9 after you and I are done. So there you go.
Yeah, full disclosure, I think this is the first time in months I've actually put a jacket on. So it's a great treat to be with you and do this. Thanks.
Well, the good news is it still fits, so you haven't put on a bunch of COVID weight. So that a boy.
Exactly.
So, hey, Brad, I guess as a way of getting started, why don't you introduce yourself, Conversity, to the audience, and maybe just talk about the transition that you made, because I think it's really intriguing as you and I were catching up a little bit before the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chief Customer Officer for Conversity Limited. We're a business that's headquartered in London. And, I made the transition to Conversity because what I was doing previously, I was working with a number of different businesses. And what was really compelling or really interesting was the companies that I was working with that had made the investments in technology, that had focused on their digital channels of service, were winning and having great success. But the companies that were a little bit late to the game, maybe hadn't made those investments, they were absolutely struggling just to keep the doors open, in some cases literally. And so for me, that was really instructive around how transformative technology and digital channel optimization was to basically success and failure in the new economy. So I made the transition to join Conversity, and it's been a wild ride. I've been here all of just a little over 90 days, but it's just been really fascinating to see what's going on in the marketplace. And I guess the point I would share is, I was presented this opportunity to take a company and grow it globally in the middle of a global pandemic. I was just really intrigued.
So Brad, I mean, one of the things, and we're seeing this across the board, onboarding as a chief commercial officer virtually has to be a challenge because you're not getting a chance to meet people in a normal environment, have the dinners, build the intimacy. Maybe share a little bit with the audience what you are doing, what you've done, in your first 90, and then kind of what you're continuing to do and maybe how you've modified your onboarding plan to get immersed in the culture, get immersed with the sales force, get immersed with your peers and your boss.
Well, it's interesting, right? So the days are much longer in this new environment because it's obviously a lot of time zones. So our office is in London, but because we're a global business, I may be on the phone with somebody in Sri Lanka. I may be on the phone with somebody in Milan. And in fact, I am. And when I say on the phone, I mean on a Zoom call. Every single conversation with prospects, coworkers, leadership is all exactly what we're doing right now. And so that has been an adjustment. So the alarm clock goes off kind of early these days to make sure that you can be front and center. Traditional lead generation process is digital. It's emails and the things that you would expect. And it's just getting really succinct with our value proposition, which is unique and different. And candidly, it's a nascent category that a lot of folks they accept these calls and out of curiosity, really, because what I said earlier, everybody understands that it's time to upgrade the website. What people don't quite grasp yet is just making it a little better isn't the leap forward innovation that's required. One of the terms that I would share with you that you're going to hear a lot more of is personalization. What we do as a company, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about the service itself, but it's focused on the fact that we're trying to replicate the in-store experience online, right? So when we walk into a retail store, we're there to purchase something. We interact with a sales advisor. They explain to us, hey, what'd you come in to buy today? We have this back and forth process. We get asked questions, and we get questions asked of us, and we ask questions to clarify and kind of qualify us. And when we make that purchase, it's with a high degree of confidence because we're getting the right thing and we're not going to have to return it. None of that exists online today, or very little anyways. It's very impersonal. Most brands' websites are rows and columns of pictures and prices and specs, and it's overwhelming.
So Brad, and I guess, so talk a little bit about that in terms of enabling organizations and what your technology does, but that's underpinned by what you said at the top of the show around the trend, and now it's been a forcing function for everybody to rethink and accelerate what we've been talking about, which is digital evolution, because transformations are big and heavy and have a high probability of failure. Evolutions have now accelerated, especially in B2B selling across the globe. And that's what we see in a lot of that. So maybe talk a little bit about what Conversity does, because I want to make sure the audience understands that. And then for you as a chief commercial officer thinking about the 21 plan, how is that informing what bets you're making relative to digital?
Okay, so there's a lot there. So first of all, let me explain what we do. And the service that we provide is called Intelligent Guided Sales Platforms, or Intelligent Guided Selling. And you say, what's that? And that's exactly the response that I gave when I was originally approached. I had no idea what they were talking about. But in essence, what we're doing for brands is we're putting software on their websites that engages consumers when they land. So you land on a website and you get engaged with a series of dynamic questions that help the brand understand who you are, what are your motivations, what are your needs, what are your goals, what's your investment tolerance. And with all that information being gathered, machine learning is operating in the background to sort of winnow down a company's assortment of products or services. And at the conclusion of that journey, and that's exactly what we call it, a customer journey, a series of recommendations are made. And what we've researched, and there are books published on this, the best one is probably The Paradox of Choice, is the fewer options you can give someone that really align to their interests and needs, the more likely you are to transact. So our clients are seeing a lot of success with this because it's increasing their online conversion rates, it's increasing their session duration times, and it's boosting their average transaction values. And those are all metrics that matter a lot in e-commerce. So that's the service. And it's a matter of helping somebody understand that early stages in a conversation. So they go, yeah, you know what? Those are things I've been tasked with driving. I'll give you more of my time. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So Brad, on that, I guess on that topic around e-commerce and digital, why were companies slow to adopt and evolve before March 15th?
It's a great question. I think we as a species are inherently, we get comfortable with the status quo. And, you know, I was just recently at I was in a virtual conference, and this gentleman was talking, and he was explaining how his 80-year-old mother was ordering food to her house and purchasing groceries online. He's like, she didn't even want to buy a cell phone, and here she is, you know, doing all these digitally enhanced things. And I think that was, for me, really the fact that so much change happens so fast in our economy, and it just caught a lot of companies comfortably off guard. And as I said, I was working with some companies that I won't mention, and they're like, hey, Brad, don't tell anybody. I'm 10% up year on year because we're just crushing it and I don't have to open up the store. So it was really an interesting model to witness, and some people just got caught off guard. We believe we're on to sort of the future of e-commerce, and that's this notion that you have to focus on the experience. You know, you and I have talked in the past when I was doing something different, it was always customer experience led, and it was always about what are people doing in the restaurant, in the store, in the bank to drive, you know, customer delight. And that practice is absolutely relevant and meaningful, but that same discipline hasn't been brought to e-commerce. And I think that, I mentioned the term personalization, the more you can personalize someone's experience online, the greater likely you will have to build brand loyalty and get them coming back and continuing to purchase from you instead of your competition.
So Brad, as it relates to educating the audience, I mean, probably one of the top three items that we're asked about right now is, how do I think about digital as part of my go-to-market strategy in 2021? What role should it play? What's my digital strategy? And our approach always is, digital isn't this thing that lives over on the right and you say, okay, like I'm rolling out a new product and that's going to be 20% of my revenue and the existing base is going to be 80. Digital underpins everything you do. And it stems across all your functions, and there's different maturity levels. So for those that don't have the background that you have, but are wrestling with the blending of sales and marketing and becoming much more commercial, like blending those two, any advice that you can give as people that are maybe early innings in their evolution of digital?
No, that's a great question. And you know, you touched on something really important there, is that the term e-commerce, and I've used it a few times because everyone knows what I mean when I say that, it's a misnomer. It's just commerce. It's just another channel that consumers use to engage with your business. And so, you know, the reality is that you need to be omni-channel. You need to have the ability for a consumer to engage with you, or a prospect for that matter, across the channel they're most comfortable in. In some people, it'll be brick and mortar. In other people, it'll be online. And in other people still, it'll be some hybrid version. You know, shipped as a service is just, you know, blowing up exponentially because people just want to stay home. We were already seeing this even before COVID, this notion of convenience, right? I never quite understood why somebody would order a quick serve restaurant's food and pay $5 or $6 to have it purchased. That's almost like the value of the entire purchase. So you're doubling the expense of a meal because you don't want to leave the house. And so we were already seeing convenience be a driver. But now we've got other things to consider, like safety, and that's exacerbating the issue. But that's really from the brand's perspective. I think what you're also asking is for, you know, the B2B organization who's trying to, you know, attract clients. And I think, to your point, the sales journey for many buyers out there is so far down the road before they ever engage with the brand. And in some cases, and quite candidly, we're working on this right now. How do I just get on your website and click and go? Like, do I need to really talk to a salesperson? If your website has done such a good job, and your digital content and your blogs and your competitors' information helps coach me up and educate me in such a way that I can transact with you without that interaction, you've got to be ready to do that, because if you're not, your competitors probably are, and they'll never come to you. Kind of an interesting segue to what you just said, and one of the things that excites me about intelligent guided selling, there are 4 kind of drivers that why brands are gravitating towards it, and one of them is educating the consumer. And you know, again, I'm early days, but one of the things that really struck me is one of my prospective clients was explaining, I'm going to use this tool to teach consumers how to buy our category. It's confusing, it's not easy to understand, and I may get them through your journey, and they may get to the recommendation, go, you know, I'm going to go to another website and check the price. But I've educated them in a way that adds value. So it's not as much about the transaction as about building a relationship with the consumer, that if they go and look and the price is equal, they're coming back to me because I made the investment in my digital channel, my digital communication strategy. I've added value in the brand relationship. And I think that's the point that I think transfers across both, whether you're a B2C or a B2B business, is investing in the relationship you have with the consumer.
Well said. So Brad, on this last segment to take us home, if you think about the headwinds that somebody is going to typically run into from your experience, no pun intended, when they say, okay, the experience of our customer and the experience of our buyers been disrupted, I've got to reimagine those journeys because it's different than it was before COVID. So that's number one. Number two, now I've reimagined it, I've got to reallocate my commercial engine, both marketing, sales, customer success. Okay, got it. Number three is, what are the risks? What are the headwinds? So maybe on the last piece of that, in terms of headwinds, mistakes you've seen people make with all of your experience, both previous and current, can you share a couple nuggets with our audience so they can maybe avoid making those that you've seen?
Things to avoid is again, sort of what we talked about is thinking that this is going to go away, thinking that there's, I think that we're all ready for 2020 to be over, but the reality is it won't be over in 2021. It's going to be new. I think the things, we just published a white paper on this, that, you know, consumer behavior is changing, and we can see that, and it's easy. And we joked about the 80-year-old woman. But consumer values are changing as well. And I think that's the underlying current that's really interesting from our perspective, is that we've seen three distinct consumer types sort of emerge from what's going on. There's a consumer that starts to be more concerned about the authenticity of a brand. You know, where is this product sourced? What's this company stand for? There was always a percentage of consumers that felt like that mattered. It's more now.
Okay.
There's also a consumer that cares about value. And again, there was always a consumer that cared about value. We're always looking for the everyday low price in something, but we've got a whole percentage of our society that their income is either not existent right now, they're unemployed, or it's at risk and they're concerned. And so brands have to really focus on how they're going to help somebody part with, you know, precious assets like their cash. And I think the other person is this safety, this notion of safety. We've got consumers, they're at home with their children, homeschooling them or doing digital learning days because they're concerned about letting them leave the house, letting them go to school, or they have elderly people in the house. And so this whole notion of safety is something that we are seeing. And I guess I say all that to say brands need to be really concerned about how our value system is shifting during the course of this pandemic. And we don't believe that it's going to revert back to normal. We actually think these are all going to be real, meaningful things that you got to think about. So I guess when you say what are the pitfalls, thinking that we're going to get back to normal, thinking that there's sort of this new normal that we're going to get to, well, maybe new normal is the right way to call it, right? But we're not going to see 2019 again. Everything has fundamentally changed, and trying to be thoughtful about how to embrace that change and lean into it, yeah. I think it's where brands need to really focus.
Wonderful. Well, Brad, it's always good to see you. You always drop good insight for the audience and for our listeners. So appreciate you taking the time. Good luck as you approach the next 90 days. And for those that are watching and listening, always appreciate your support and your eyes and ears. And as I like to remind everybody, good luck as you try and make your number.